What if the most important number in the global economy no longer means what we think it means? For decades, interest rates were supposed to be the signal, the price of money. High rates meant risk, low rates meant safety. Simple, elegant, trusted. But today, something strange is happening. Rates go up and markets rally. Rates go down and nothing improves. Central banks speak and nobody really listens. So here's the uncomfortable question hiding in plain sight. What happens when the world stops trusting interest rates? Because quietly, that might already be happening.
Not in a dramatic collapse, not with alarms, but with indifference. And indifference is far more dangerous. To understand why this matters right now, you have to rewind a bit. Interest rates weren't always just a policy tool. They were a form of communication. Before spreadsheets and algorithms, interest was a social contract. You lend me money. I give it back later, plus a little extra for the risk and the wait. That little extra carried information. About time. About trust. About fear.
When rates rose, it told you capital was scarce or risky. When rates fell, it meant money was abundant and confidence was high. For most of modern history, that signal worked surprisingly well. Then, the 2008 financial crisis broke something. The system nearly collapsed and central banks did what they had to do. They cut rates to zero, then below zero. Then they printed trillions to stabilize everything. Emergency measures, temporary tools. Except they never really stopped. For over a decade, interest rates lived near zero across the developed world. In Europe and Japan, savers were literally paying banks to hold their money. Governments borrowed at rates that made no historical sense. And the markets adopted. Cheap money became normal. Debt stopped feeling dangerous. Asset prices floated higher, not because productivity exploded, but because money had nowhere else to go. Interest rates were still there, but their meaning was changing. Then came inflation. Suddenly, the one thing central banks promised they could control came roaring back. Energy prices surged, supply chains snapped, rent, food, transport, everything jumped. So, central banks did the opposite of what they'd done for years. They hiked rates, fast, aggressively. On paper, this should have cooled everything down. But look closely at what actually happened. Inflation eased in some areas, but not cleanly. Growth slowed but didn't collapse. Asset prices fell, then rebounded. Housing markets froze, then partially thawed.
The response was messy, uneven, confusing. And that confusion is the clue. Because interest rates don't operate in a vacuum anymore. They're trying to control a system that has quietly outgrown them. Trillions of dollars move through shadow banking, private credit, derivatives, and offshore structures. When rates rise, the pain doesn't distribute evenly. Some sectors choke instantly. Others barely notice. The signal gets distorted. Interest rates used to tell everyone the same story. Now they tell 10 different stories at once.
There's also a deeper, quieter problem. Rates assume the future is predictable enough to price. But look around. Geopolitical conflict, demographic collapse, climate shocks, AI uncertainty, political polarization. How do you price time when the future itself feels unstable? So markets lean on stories instead. This time is different. The Fed will pivot. Technology will save us. Because belief is what actually holds the system together. And that raises the final question. If interest rates no longer anchor the system, what does? Because once belief fades, the world doesn't look for a better number. It looks for a different story. And history suggests that story is rarely calm.